everybody, how you doing again? This is Mike LePond from Mike LePond's Silent Assassins, and welcome to the next edition of my Storyteller series, as we talk about all these things and just have fun talking about my life and bass playing and everything with heavy metal and rock and roll. So today I thought I would talk about some of my favorite bass players of all time and how they influenced my bass playing style. You know, many people consider me to be, you know, progressive metal bass player. And yeah, I've been doing that for a long time. But my influences really come from the old classic metal guys and a lot of rock and roll guys too. So I have all these influences. So, you know, we'll talk a little bit about that, and hopefully it'll be interesting for you today. Okay? So let's start with this. Let's start with this question. What happened 41 years ago today? Does anyone know? Anybody in the audience? Nobody. 41 years ago today, Kiss played at Madison Square Garden in New York City, July of 1979, Madison Square Garden, New York City. It was at the time, it was like the place for rock and roll, heavy metal. Everybody on earth played this place. And this was going to be my first concert ever. And my father took me and my friend, and we went to see Kiss. So I was 13 years old. Now think about what your mind is like at that time. You're 13 years old. You know, you still love comic books and superheroes. So I go to see Kiss, and I'm just blown away because these guys, you know, there's bombs going off everywhere. Everything's in chaos. It's just like an incredible thing. And then I see Gene Simmons. He's flying through the air. He's spitting blood. He's breathing fire, you know, and he's got this bass in his hand, you know, and you know, I see him. He's playing, you know, so like. You know, and then he's like, you know, he's like making all these crazy movements, like whatever, Firehouse. So I'm watching this, and I'm like, wow, these guys are like superheroes. And I decided after that show, I wanted to be just like Gene Simmons. So what did I do? At the age of 14, I took lessons for a year from a jazz bass player, and I learned to read. But, you know, the more I did that, I saw that it wasn't really for me, you know. Now, don't get me wrong. I think all the bass players out there should learn how to read. And I regret not learning how to read. But, you know, at the time I was young, and I just wanted to play rock and roll, heavy metal, and I just wanted to be like Gene Simmons on the stage. So, my first goal as a young bass player was to try to learn every Kiss song that was released at the time. Now, little did I know when I was 14, 15, that Gene Simmons bass lines were a really good training ground for a young bass player. I mean, what Gene did in the 1970s with his bass playing, he really taught me how to walk the bass a little bit. He really taught me how to outline a chord, you know. So he would really have these nice bass lines. Like, here's another one. Let's say a strutter. And the songs were, they were really good to learn from. and they weren't too hard to learn. So I really got a good understanding of bass playing from Gene. But obviously my friends, you know, were all buying new albums from new bands at the time, and so they were introducing me to other bass players. So I think probably the second bass player that I really discovered and really liked what he was doing was a guy who did a bass line like this. Right? A guy by the name of Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath, you know. When I discovered him, I think they were kind of on the, I want to say, Heaven and Hell record. You know, so then I hear he did some amazing stuff, just like simple stuff like this. That was one of my favorites. That was Lady Evil on that album. So his style was heavier than Gene's style, but it was still in that bluesy kind of a feel, you know, still that pentatonic kind of bluesy kind of thing. So their styles were kind of similar, but he gave me a little more, he led me a little more towards heavy metal, I think, you know. So at this point I got these two bass players. I'm learning whatever I can from these guys. But you know, I'm always listening and my friends are always showing me more stuff. And then I hear one day another friend introduces me to some guy that had a song like this. That's Killers off the Killers album. Now Steve Harris, yeah, that's Steve Harris from Iron Maiden. So Steve Harris, I couldn't believe how fast his picking fingers were. It was unbelievable how fast this guy could play, and he was a great songwriter, and he just did everything great. And he pushed, you know, he pushed us young bass players to the limits. So I tried to learn as much Steve Harris as I could. And then I had Geezer Butler and I had Gene Simmons. So now my style at this point, you know, in the early 80s is really, really heavy metal, you know. But then I used to, you know, I used to try to listen to other things too. And, a band called Rush came across my turntable, and that was a really interesting band too, because you had Geddy Lee, who was another phenomenal songwriter, phenomenal singer. His bass playing was so melodic, I mean, there was nothing like it, and he did all kinds of styles of bass playing, you know. And I think the first time I ever heard him was, I guess probably a lot of you heard for the first time, you know, this riff. And then where'd it go? No, it. So that was like the Moving Pictures album. That album, I just tried to digest it as much as I can. It was absolutely incredible album. And so that really set me on my path. And then there was one more bass player I heard that was just blew me away. And he played the bass kind of like a guitar. And let's see who can guess before I tell you who it is. All right, so I'm going to change guitars right now. All right, let's see here. All right, this is what I usually do when I play live with some bands. I change my own stuff because I just feel comfortable doing it. All right, so let's see here. Let's get a sound here. Joey DeMaio from Manowar. So Joey DeMaio now had a totally different style than all these guys. He played the guitar, he played the bass like a guitar. He hit tons of power chords. And the most interesting thing about Joey was he would play this 8-string bass. So I fell in love with the 8-string bass. And once I heard this from the first album, I was hooked. It went something like this. Wait, let's get some chorus on this. Let's make it sound good. All right, here we go. That's good. All right, here we go. Once I had that, I was like, wow. So I've done a lot of songwriting with the 8-string as well as the 4-string. And but my advice to everybody who plays the bass: don't only listen to bass players, listen to guitar players, listen to different kinds of music. Do whatever it takes to give you influences. All right, so those guys are like the main guys where I come from. So let me just say something here. This is my new album here. The band is called Mike LePond's Silent Assassins. Okay, it's out on Silver Lining Music. It's available right now. And the bass playing on that has I would say, definitely has all the styles from all the people I mentioned. It's classic heavy metal. It's got some folky stuff in there. It has 4-string bass, 8-string bass, and I hope you like it. It's available now. Mike LePond's SilentAssassins.com or any other place you get music. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Storyteller, and I'll see you next time.